Palestine motion will be taken first, and this is the conflict in Israel and Palestine. Councillor Joe Salmon, can I call upon you to move your motion? And as you know, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, so I'm very happy to move this motion. So do I get my 3 minutes starting now, yeah? Bang, I'll start the clock. Right, so I'd like you all to support this motion, although there are a few things missing from it that I would have liked to include, and I feel obliged to highlight and explain those now. You might notice, first of all, this motion does not condemn the horrific attacks on the 7th of October. That's something I feel very uncomfortable about personally. I think there's no contradiction in opposing the occupation and the subjugation of Palestine and condemning the horrific attacks we saw on the 7th of October. And I would say, be morally consistent, you must hold both positions simultaneously. You'll also notice this motion doesn't conclude any condemnation of the genocidal and counterproductive response by the Israeli state, and although it hopes for a ceasefire and hopes for a release of the hostages, it does not call on the government to take any actions towards those ends. Now, I was told those things were, although they were included in the original motion, those were not things we could speak to this evening, which slightly frustrates me. I do think there is a lack of leadership on this issue from our political class. And there are two common traps I think people fall into when they encounter horror like we're seeing today in Gaza, that started on that horrific day on the 7th of October. The first thing people will do is they will witness that horror and they will feel terrible sense of powerlessness, but that will fade over time and they will begin to accept those horrible things as just one of the grim realities of the world, like a natural disaster almost. Or alternately, they will decide or continue to believe that one side is the side of truth and justice, and the other side, no matter what their position, is simply evil. And from that point on, all atrocities that are carried out, even those that are carried out by the side they believe to be true and just, are actually the fault of the other side they label as evil. Now, those two simplistic understandings of a conflict are one of the things that means those conflicts are sustained and can be exploited by the forces of capitalism and colonialism. Now, make no mistake, I know it's going to make me fairly unpopular and probably unelectable, but I'm not going to make it easy for this council to adopt either one of those simplistic understandings of this conflict. Now, I would ask you to support this motion because it is unashamedly pro-peace. Now, there is a need for us as a council to show leadership here that is not being shown by our national government. We are one of the few countries that does not support a ceasefire in the UN, and that is shameful. Now, this motion only goes a small way to addressing the problems we face, but I would still ask you to support it because it does make that a few small tentative steps. But we must recognise there is much more we need to do to help bring this horrific conflict to an end, and we cannot shy away from discussing the horrors of this terrible war. All right, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor.